Good evening. I'm Savannah Pratt. Last year, over 53,000 Americans died from opioid-related overdoses. This means that in just 1 year, more Americans died from opioids than car wrecks. And it's roughly equivalent to the number of Americans that died during 10 years of the Vietnam War. Join us tonight as we dig deeper into a subject that is ravaging America.
Any alcoholic and drug addict that's been struggling, they'll tell you straight up there's a hell. So we've been through it.
Our tolerance for pain is diminishing, but will relief cost you your life?
Are you going to get that phone call? Somebody's dying every day.
Congratulations to the senior class of 2011. We made it.
And what happened?
He died.
And I thought opiates was what I needed to numb those feelings.
It's almost like they need that drug in order to survive.
It becomes live to use and use to live.
What will recovery look like, and will it demand a fight?
I'm not sick anymore.
For opiate withdrawals, it's hell on earth.
Body gets physically dependent on it to the point where it literally hurts to be normal.
Opioids are affecting more people than any drug in U.S. history, and we're here to journey with those afflicted to learn why.
Now the doctor's telling me to take them, so the doctor knows better than I do, right?
Doctor had the blood from Big Pharma. He said that he would heal me, but he only gave me problems. My drug dealer was a doctor.
Understanding the everyday reality of an opiate addiction is hard to fathom unless we can gain the perspective of someone fighting the disease. In North Georgia, there's a community where people are not alone in the struggle against opiate addiction, and this is where we are headed.
My name is Bo. I've been in the program for 10 months now. My addiction started, like a lot of other people's, with a doctor. I broke both my arms and my collarbone in a dirt bike wreck. I was prescribed opiates, Lortabs. Loved the feeling. When the scripts ran out, I stopped using, but I always remember that feeling. A couple years later, my grandmother passed away. Somebody I was really close to. I went back to using what I knew would numb me. And that's the opiates. I knew I could use those, I could turn back to those, and I wouldn't have to feel the pain. I wouldn't have to feel the grief. Wouldn't have to feel the sorrow. I wouldn't have to feel.
When we receive an injury, little nerve receptors in our body let us know something is wrong. So we turn to prescription painkillers to help relieve that pain. But when the prescription runs out, sometimes the pain from the withdrawals can be even more painful than what the prescription was originally masking.
I was addicted before I even knew what addiction was. I didn't know about physical dependency or withdrawals or any of that stuff. But it didn't take long to figure it out. I got in an accident and hurt my knee, and I got prescribed hydrocodone. And I had built it up to be such a monster in my mind that when it was just this warm feeling, you know, it's just like, oh, this is not that bad. It was so opposite of what I had built it up to be that it almost like took me by surprise. I was like, oh, something that feels this good, it can't be that bad.
Jonathan was no longer looking to medicate the pain from his knee injury, but rather medicate the pain from his withdrawals.
It turned into that, you know, I hurt and I don't want to hurt. One of my family members, he had broke his back and he was prescribed the oxycodones, the Roxys, but he had 15 milligrams. And I found one of those on the laundry room floor and I tried that and it was so much more powerful. I was like, wow, this one pill can do what 10 pills does. So I started doing those. It's like battling yourself every single day I mean, even when you have some, it's not enough. I mean, I couldn't even make it through a night without having to wake up in the middle of the night just to do something, just to be able to go back to sleep, just to make it to in the morning.
The outside appeared normal. He went to college and he had 3 jobs. But it was only a matter of time before the appearance of normal wore off.
It's like you buy enough energy to be able to buy a little bit more energy later on with the drugs. I mean, it's no way to live. It controls you completely.
Opiate addiction is reaching beyond our youth into an unexpected demographic. This is the 50-year and older users, and we don't hear about them very often. But in just 1 year, 2.7 million Americans over the age of 50 abused prescription painkillers. So what has caused such an increase in drug addiction within this demographic?
1 out of 10 Americans suffers from chronic pain. And that's an issue in our country, and this is the go-to medication to address that pain, even though unfortunately there is no evidence supporting the use of opioids for chronic pain.
The addiction can start through treatment of chronic pain or invasive procedures like back surgery. Don knows the struggle of an opiate addiction after 50 because he lived it.
I would use probably up to 300 milligrams a day.
Wow,
1030 milligrams.
Of Oxycontin?
Roxy's. My day would be basically just seeking drugs, seeking opiates. It wasn't a euphoric feeling anymore. It was just a maintenance type feeling so that I could function throughout the day. I would be able to work. I would be able to drive. I would be able to take a shower. Without it, it was almost impossible. It's just a constant battle. You're just constantly increasing the dosage so that you get that same feeling that the addict in you wants.
And you know, according to the CDC, they say an amount to avoid is 90 milligrams a day. And so you were using the above.
And that was the minimum. If I could afford more, I would use more.
That was your minimum. It was 100 milligrams a day. So describe that feeling. What were you getting from using that much each day?
I was basically just not being sick, not being what they call dope sick.
With 2 months down and 10 months to go in recovery at the Jericho House, he's holding on to the future when he will finish the program. You've been here for 2 months. 2 months. How do you feel?
Well, we had group the other morning and I started tearing up a little bit as I am now. It was, I'm not sick anymore. I don't wake up with that horrible sick feeling.
Academic excellence came easy for Brantley. He attended Georgia Tech, but while he was there, he started using prescription painkillers, which escalated to becoming hooked on heroin. He graduated, but then eventually became homeless, a life that he never fathomed for himself, all started because of prescription painkillers.
It became more of the 30 milligram uncut oxycodones, and it grew to be up to, I believe, 16 a day of those. So over 300 milligrams per day.
As their tolerance continued to grow, Dawn and Brantley started using well over the recommended dosage.
Once I was at that point, I had graduated from college and I was working full-time. I was a manager for Waffle House, a position that I settled for. So my day would start out with doing some pills, arriving at work at about 6:30 and having to start my daily tasks. By the time the drugs were starting to wear off, it was around lunchtime. And this was about an 8-month period. I would leave my store unattended in the middle of my shift for an hour, hour and a half to go get pills because I couldn't physically make it through the rest of my day.
Eventually, his dealer became his roommate.
I had numerous different dealers, but this one was very reliable. He would front me drugs and let me pay him back later. here and there. Basically, it got to the point where I owed him more than I was going to be able to pay back. And he made the suggestion, hey, if you let me move in with you, you've got this big apartment, I'll knock off that debt. And he basically just took over my apartment. My addiction slowly got worse, obviously. And it got to the point where I owed him money again, and it just escalated to the point that he laid hands on me a few times and I had to get out of there.
Brantley went to multiple recovery centers, but relapsed after each one. He just couldn't shake his opiate addiction.
There was a guy who came in when I'd been there about 4 or 5 days, and he just kept going on and on about how great the drugs were there, how cheap they were, how close it was. In my weak state, wanting to use just to feel physically better, it didn't really take much convincing. I had the guy draw me a map, and I walked out and walked straight to the drug dealer's house.
He walked to the Bluffs, which is home to the largest heroin market in Georgia. People come from all over to get their next hit of heroin, and this is exactly what Brantley was looking for.
The guy saw me from about a block away and just motioned me over. He knew that that's why I was there. It's the type of environment that it is down there. I would sleep in the outdoor storage room in the back of the Waffle House. No one knew I was staying there. I would only come in at night and leave early in the morning before anyone else showed up for work.
Finally, he hit rock bottom. He was homeless, broke, and with only a few minutes left on his prepaid cell phone, he calls his mom to ask for help once again.
It was about 40 degrees outside and extremely windy. I was sleeping in the back of an abandoned car and had nothing long sleeve, no blankets, just a few things that were short sleeve, nothing warm, and I was absolutely miserable, and I knew it was going to only get colder. I had a prepaid cell phone with about 28 minutes left on it, and I had no money. I called my mom and asked her to please help me. I need your help again. I can't do this anymore. I'm absolutely miserable. I'll do whatever you want. And she told me, I can't help you, but I can pray for you. And she hung up.
Recognizing that his family was no longer there to pick up the pieces, he started taking matters into his own hands to get into rehab. He got into detox, and the next day his mother came and took him to the Jericho house.
It's nice to know that there is a future for me instead of possibly dead in a year. You know, the drugs is just a dead end road. There's two places that'll go, either prison or 6 feet under. You know.
My name is John. I'm a recovering drug addict. I'm 26 years old, and I've recently come to realize that I'm my own biggest problem. When I was about 20 years old, my opiate addiction began. I started off with painkillers. It started off just a few a week. I didn't come to realize I was really addicted until maybe a few months into taking them. And that's all I got, guys. I love you.
Love you, John.
For John, opiates masked more than just physical pain.
My first exposure to opiates was with my buddy. He came across hydrocodone, 10 milligram pills. I decided to try it, and it gave me a feeling that I've never felt before. It gave me a feeling of security. It gave me a feeling of confidence. It gave me a feeling of concentration. It kind of gave me everything that I was looking for at the time and more.
He went into short-term recovery and met Emily while he was there. But after he got out, he relapsed. 30 days of recovery wasn't long enough to break his addiction.
I'm put in a position where I'm given the opportunity to change my life. I'm still trying to cheat my way through life, and it's not working.
After he relapsed, their relationship was torn apart. With a baby on the way, he knew it was time to make some changes. So he chose long-term recovery at the Jericho house.
I'm gonna feel accomplished. I'm gonna feel like I just got over the biggest hill. It's hard being away from them every day. It really is. But I'm doing this for myself, I'm doing this for them, and I'm doing this for God.
Opiate addictions can be all-consuming, but what causes them to be so addictive? Dr. Carmen Martinez is a psychiatric doctor at the DeKalb Addiction Center. She works with people with all forms of addiction, including opiates.
It is intended to address pain. It's going to bind receptors in your nervous system to address that and diminish. It also goes to an area in your brain called the brain reward system, and it may have reinforcing effects there. The brain reward system is a little center in our brain that kind of lets us know how good something is. Endorphins, which are feel-good chemicals that your body produces that are released and make you feel good. When you're in love, the same thing happens. But those are natural rewards. A drug does that 100, 1,000 times more than that. It's not something that our brains are meant to take.
We grow up believing that the family medicine cabinet holds the remedies to fix all the bumps and bruises of life, but not knowing how dangerous some of the prescriptions in our family's cabinet could be devastating.
An adolescent who's, looking at a cabinet doesn't know anything about this, they're likely to try it. If that adolescent is struggling with other things and also happens to have the genetics to develop an addictive disease, that's where it all starts.
We made it. We have had our first taste of experience with success. May we experience much more of it in the future.
Between high school and college, he got to a point in his life that he was very stressed out, and he went to the family medicine cabinet to try to sleep. He was very bright. His mind just kept turning, and he self-medicated. So he probably was looking for something like maybe Advil PM, Excedrin PM, one of those things that take the edge off and let you go to sleep. And because there was nothing like that in our family medicine cabinet, he found something that said may cause drowsiness. And it was an old opioid prescription, and he took it.
So he's just looking in the medicine cabinet, he finds an old Vicodin prescription and uses it, and that's how it began for him. An innocent beginning turned into a terrible addiction. He went from excelling academically and being class president senior year to addicted from the first pill.
Our lives, however, I would like everyone to take one last walk with me down memory lane and remember how great our time was at Kennesaw Mountain.
How frequently was he using prescription opioids?
Daily, at the end. It had ups and downs. There were times very early in his usage that he would stop and he wouldn't use, and then he'd go back to it. And in the beginning, I think you can kind of stop and go, and then the more that you get into it, there's no stopping point. And during those times, it's hell on earth.
A parent's worst nightmare was becoming reality. As his addiction got worse, rehab became the next step. And so what was that moment where Davis ended up going into rehab?
It just came to a point where we gave him an ultimatum and said, you either go to rehab or find a different way. We still had 2 other children at home, but at the time we couldn't put them into that lifestyle, and there just comes a time when you have to say, you got to make some changes.
Right.
And he was willing. It wasn't, he didn't fight. He was like, it's time.
It is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. The senior class of 2011 says, we conquered the mountain. Now onto ourselves.
If you have not experienced it, it's something that you cannot even fathom.
20 days of recovery went by quickly, and now it was time to bring him home. What was that like, bringing him home? Did you guys think that you were over that hurdle? Or?
Of course. He had been to rehab, he had had counseling, he had had psychiatric people work with him. He looked amazing. He had the light back in his eyes. He had gained weight. He looked beautiful. He was my son again. And so you look at that picture and you think, wow, he's back. We'd done the work. He had done the work.
Right.
Yeah.
He turned to heroin to cope with his post-acute withdrawal symptoms. But he's not alone. 75% of Americans that become addicted to prescription painkillers eventually turn to heroin.
And not knowing what that was or any experience with it or about it, what happened was his body began to crave again, and you just think, you know, this is this lifetime thing. I'm always going to have it.
And so he started developing withdrawals again after he got out. And then you're thinking, what's this? We thought we were past this.
No, he didn't share that with us.
He never told you that he was having withdrawals.
No.
So he was just dealing with that on his own. Wow. Heroin seemed to be the most immediate relief.
He progressed into it just like most people do. Pills go for about $1 a milligram on the street. You start with a 10 milligram opioid prescription, you're paying $10 maybe 3 or 4 times a day. Well, then you go to 20 and that doubles your money. You go to 30 milligrams, that triples your money. So what you're paying $300 or $400 for in a day, pill-wise, you can get for $10 a day in a bag of heroin.
Heroin's just the next step. It's cheaper, it's stronger.
Was that ever a difficulty to find prescription drugs, though?
I had a hard time finding them where I relocated in Florida, which is why I used heroin for the first time.
And it's accessible, more potent, and more addictive.
Heroin was the only thing that I really wanted because of the price and because of how potent it is.
You don't feel it coming on. It's just like me sitting here talking to you, and all of a sudden you're waking up and it's 4 hours later and you feel crazy, like your face, your whole body's like doesn't have circulation going, so like you feel like if you sit on your foot for a while and it goes to sleep, your whole body feels that way. You can't think straight, your equilibrium's all off.
With the pills, you know what you're getting every single time because they're manufactured, they're FDA approved, you know what you're getting. With heroin, you never know.
It enters your brain and leaves your brain very quickly, so it creates a compulsion to continue use.
The need for more created desperation, meaning they would get it at any cost.
When I broke into a dealer's house in the Bluff, probably the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my life. If I'd been found, there is no question that I probably would have been shot in the head on the spot.
It's dangerous. You don't feel it though. It's just like you're gone, and some people just don't wake up from that. And that's an overdose.
Far too many overdoses are happening because of this illicit drug, and the outcome is sometimes fatal. You had investigators show up at your door. What was your first thought when you opened the door and saw them?
I was waiting for him. I knew. Davis had never not come home. Never. He left Monday night. He told me he loved me, he'd be back, and he never came home. And I knew.
That's got to be a parent's worst nightmare, to see an investigator show up at their door. And can you even remember what your emotions were in that moment?
I just looked at him and I said, he's gone, isn't he? When you live with somebody who's using opioid prescriptions and heroin, 2 things are going to happen. They're going to end up in jail, or they're going to end up dead. If you don't stop and get into recovery, those are your 2 options.
Right. It's hard to imagine the pain of losing a child to heroin, and it's becoming far too common in our country. As we are looking for resolutions with one drug, there is now a newer, more potent drug on the market. In just 3 years, deaths have skyrocketed 540%, all because of fentanyl.
Fentanyl is taking the opioid epidemic to a new level of urgency.
Somebody grab the oxygen, please.
Wait, do you have Narcan? Can I steal from the Narcan kit?
You overdosed.
I can't even see that.
Right. And a fourth of this is potentially fatal.
Anyone who wants to know just how powerful and deadly fentanyl is should hear his story.
Fentanyl is receiving a lot of coverage because just touching it could be fatal. It is usually prescribed to patients in advanced stages of cancer. However, it is 50 times more potent than heroin.
And I got on fentanyl, fentanyl patches, fentanyl lollipops, suckers.
And how did you start using fentanyl patches?
They were just offered to me from someone, hey, I got some fentanyl patches, you want to try those? Sure.
And were they just coming from off the street, or where were they coming from?
They usually come, the ones I was getting was coming from cancer patients.
Wow.
The lollipops themselves, you just kind of swab your gums a couple of times. I was sucking them like a lollipop. Wow. And, you know, and I would get extremely high off of that and just nod out.
Fentanyl also comes in a patch. It's designed to be up to 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine.
You usually just put them on and go through your day, but it got to the point where I was cutting the tip off of the patch and orally administering the gel in my mouth and taking it orally. And
wow.
Yeah, right across the street from where I lived was a 911 service, and they had to pick me up a couple times to take me to the hospital, Narcan me or something, you know, get me back.
So you've OD'd a couple of times?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Really, I was just angry when I came to.
Why were you angry?
Because I was in withdrawals. The Narcan takes you straight out of your euphoria, I guess you could call it. And
do you think fentanyl is changing the playing field when it comes to overdoses?
Yes, most definitely. Fentanyl particles can get up in your nasal passages, whatever, and you'll pass out. It's happened to law enforcement.
The smallest amount that you can hardly see of fentanyl can now
kill you, and fentanyl will kill you. If you say heroin is unforgiving, fentanyl is fatal.
With opiate addictions on the rise, getting in recovery and getting in community seems to be the key to winning this fight.
Stressful times came.
I walked into the Jericho House 10 months ago at 185 pounds. A strong wind could have blown me away, man. I was in good shape, but the drugs took me down to just nothing. I was just an empty shell of a person. I'm very grateful I don't have to wake up in the morning and have a chemical just to be able to be happy, just to be able to smile, just to be able to be me. Very grateful I can look in the mirror now and accept who I am and love me for who I am. I'm very grateful for the guys here, for the staff, like I said. That's about all I got. Love y'all.
Recovery is raw and it is gritty, but community is where the healing begins.
I'm cut off.
One form of recovery is using prescriptions like Suboxone or methadone to treat prescription opiate addictions. While some say that this is trading one addiction for another, Dr. Martinez says that we have to first understand what addiction means.
So we have to remember what defines an addiction. It's usually a set of behaviors that cause severe impairment in somebody's life. So when you have somebody going to a methadone clinic, taking their daily dose of methadone early in the morning, going to work, having a family, taking care of themselves, you know, having a stable life, that is not an addiction. So I think we all need to understand as a community that addiction is not just taking a substance, it's the state of behavior that accompanies that.
The DeKalb Addiction Clinic is an abstinence-based recovery program rather than a medication-assisted rehab program. There are a number of facilities in Georgia that focus on treatment through medications like Suboxone and methadone. Some of our recoveries said those prescriptions only became addictions too. Do you regret going the route of using methadone to try to get over your opioid addiction?
At first, it kept me from seeking other drugs, but like I say, it became an addiction within itself. I would dose one at the window and take 28 home, and 28 doses to a drug addict, or I would usually double or triple up, start off with, you know, so I can get that euphoric feeling.
Because there's a lot of controversy surrounding treating opioids with another prescription. How did you feel that Suboxone, did it help you or did it hinder you in your recovery?
I think it hindered me. The only thing I think Suboxone did for me was buy me time. I was still abusing Suboxone. Suboxone was giving me exactly what the opiates gave me. It numbed my feelings. It gave me an escape.
So what is the difference between Suboxone, methadone, or hydrocodone and Oxycontin?
Yes, so methadone and Suboxone, it's important to distinguish them from the actual opioid that the person is abusing, because they don't necessarily do that. Let me give you an example with heroin. Heroin is a drug that quickly goes into your brain and quickly gets out, so hence the compulsion to keep using it over and over again. Methadone is a long-acting opioid, which means that it doesn't give you those highs or lows. It kind of keeps a steady state when it comes to providing that comfort.
I personally am not against a medically supervised short-term Suboxone detox maintenance to help with detox. I have no problem with that. You know, but there's also the other side of it is sometimes having to go through that detox without medication really burns it in your head. Hey, I don't ever want to go through this again. So there's two sides to it.
This is a controversial topic, and it will probably remain this way as we search for ways to decrease the epidemic. The alternative is abstinence-based recovery.
About 21 days after he went in, they said, we've done everything we can do, and he's being released. We didn't have the knowledge that 1 month of rehab wouldn't even touch an opioid addiction. After that point, I found out research, probably almost a year later, that if you go into a rehab situation and it only lasts for 28 days, for an opioid addiction, you're 32 times more likely to come out and die within 4 months than if you'd never gone at all. So all it does is lower the tolerance of your body to the drug, and then your brain hasn't had time to heal. So it's like you're physically better, but your brain doesn't understand that.
Do you think that that would have had a different outcome for your son if he had gone to a longer program?
Well, if you can get a year in recovery, you're 67% more likely to stay in recovery. So the longer that you stay in recovery, the likelihood increases that you'll stay there. So, yes.
It's smart to not hurt if you don't have to.
This is where we meet Larry. He founded the year-long abstinence-based recovery program called the Jericho House, based on his own experience struggling with an opiate addiction.
When I started taking the pain pills, my back got worse because it masked over what was going on. My body was saying, hello, something's wrong. And we were living a generation where we just do away with the pain.
He had back surgery when he was 30. Now he looks back on that time and it motivates him to help others.
If I started feeling pain in my back, running out of pills, he would fill them. Well, this doctor particularly, whether it's from ignorance of addiction or whatever, I pretty much could get him to write anything I wanted. So we live in an age of medicating, and we'll do or take anything to avoid feeling what we don't want to feel. And pain's certainly something we don't want to feel.
After he broke his own addiction with opiates, he set out on a journey to start helping others. And then the Jericho House was started.
I realized that there was a whole community of people that were trying to get help with addictions that weren't being addressed, and that was dual diagnosis, where folks that were struggling with addictions, but they also had depression, anxiety, other mental health issues. And so we set this course to explore letting people in with dealing with dual diagnosis and working more closely with professional mental health people and so on. And I'm so glad we did, because we got some of the coolest people, that we would have never had in the program, and they're getting help, and they're learning how not to be ashamed of the fact that they have needs that are different.
The Jericho House was born from the idea that people need time for their bodies and their brain to heal from an opiate addiction. 50% of the men at the Jericho House are recovering from opiates.
We definitely want to paint the picture for him and guide him, but the men in the program just swallow them up. They take them in as brothers, and usually they're still, even if they've been through a detox center, they're still kind of not totally detoxed, so we kind of give allowances there. But the first phase is orientation, and the second phase is what we call the regeneration process. And then the third phase is inner healing, and then the last phase is discipleship.
So what happens after a year in recovery? When they're back facing the reality of their life, what steps can be taken to ensure the recovery lasts a lifetime?
While they're in the formal setting of rehab or incarceration, they do great. Davis did great in rehab. When they come out, they relapse because there's no aftercare. So the zone provides aftercare. And as with any other disease, if you don't manage it, you'll succumb to the disease. The zone is a place where you come to stay healthy. And you may need it once a month, you may need it every day, you may need to be dropped off in the morning and picked up at night. You need that connection. Connection is the opposite of addiction. And without that connection, it won't end well. So the zone is where people come in recovery to stay in recovery.
The zone has counselors and group sessions available every day to help people in opiate recovery. And so if somebody's wanting to come to the zone, what is that process like? They just come to the front door?
Walk through the door.
It's that simple?
It's that simple.
And like here-ish, just draw a line across.
There are many things to keep people entertained at the zone, including art class and music therapy. Why a coffee shop? Why did you guys decide to put a coffee shop here?
If you know anybody who's ever suffered with the disease of addiction, I don't know any of them who don't drink caffeine. But what we were finding out is when we opened the doors and people were coming in for meeting and they were coming in for social connection and whatever, if anybody left to go anywhere, I'm running to the coffee shop, I'll be right back. So we said, shoot, that's an opportunity. So people love coffee shops, they love internet cafes, they love social connection, and a coffee shop provides all of that. So we're putting baristas, people in long-term recovery, back to work as baristas. Anytime you come into the zone, you're working with people who are peer support.
The zone is able to offer so many different ways to help people because it is completely funded by the Davis Direction Foundation. Also, tell us about the dog that's walking around. Yeah, tell us about Ollie. What is her purpose here?
Ollie was donated to us or gifted to us by Southeastern Guide Dogs. And Ollie is a seeing eye dog, certified seeing eye dog, certified veterans PTSD dog, and a certified facility therapy dog. Oh, wow. She has more training than most of us. And what she does here is she loves everybody unconditionally. And that's her job, and she does it well. She will kind of gravitate around the room and then gravitate to the person, and she'll just lay her head right in their lap. Just provides love.
You decided to look at opioid recovery in the face and say, that shouldn't have happened. We're going to do something to help. And you opened the Davis Direction Foundation and the Zone. Why? Why did you decide to do that?
After Davis died, people from all over the community came out of the woodworks. And because now they knew that you had been through what they were going through, they wanted to share their story. And I had no idea how prevalent drug use was in our community. So 3 weeks after he died, we opened the Davis Direction Fund. And 4 months later, we were a determined 501c3 nonprofit.
The Jericho House is also helping with aftercare by teaching the men trades that they can then use after they leave the program.
A lot of the guys that come here, especially the younger, the work ethic's not where it probably needs to be. Their number one job is to go get high.
One of the trades taught is woodmanship, and it's taught in the Jericho House wood shop.
For me, it's kind of funny because this job I have at Jericho House is now turning into something I can see myself carrying on when I leave here.
The old wood that we take from like 100-year-old barns and all, it kind of was like these guys. I mean, it's repurposed wood. It was built for one thing and torn down and built for another. And that's kind of like what the lives of these guys are going through. They came here broken and seemingly have no purpose. So just taking the wood and just letting these guys sand it down, refinish it, and build something beautiful, it's just kind of like their lives. It kind of lines up with our mission.
Yeah, that is what a lot of these guys are, and myself included, you know, coming in here bruised, battered, and beat up and getting polished up, and then, you know, sit back out in the world to be a productive member of society instead of taking, you know, you give back.
But it's amazing how quickly they get the vision of it. They start feeling purpose. You know, this saddest commentary was a man's life ending not knowing why it began. And so they find purpose. They're also a part of something bigger than themselves. The industries, whether it's the wood shop or the other industries, they bring in income.
This place has saved my life, and it's not one guy, but it was everybody. You know, it was, I mean, I can't thank just one, but it's all of them, and it's, you know, it's the effort that they all put into this place, and I can only speak for myself. It gave me a place to look back, reflect, and gave me a place to change and grow, and again, I'm grateful for it.
What would you say to someone that is considering going into a recovery center, maybe even the Jericho House, but they're afraid of the withdrawals, they're afraid of taking that step? What would you tell them?
Just like any change in your life, at first it's all new, it's uncomfortable. For opiate withdrawals, it's hell on earth, it is. But once you get past the first stage, it's all worth it. It's like you're seeing life in a different lens. It's amazing.
Since John has been in the Jericho House, he and Emily have gotten engaged, and they're raising their precious son, Paul.
It takes a little hard time. That first week, I didn't sleep for 8 days. In the same breath, it's so much better to be able to wake up, not need nothing to get up. They treat you like family there. They help you in ways that you don't even know that you need help in yet.
And what would you like to tell the Jericho House as a whole for getting you to this milestone?
I've still got 10 months to go, but I don't look at it as 10 months. I look at it as one day at a time. I feel it's going to feel like a lot of freedom. I thought that I was free when I was using, but I was really bound.
The reality of the prescription opioid addiction is closer to you than the other people that we've spoken to. Is that reality ever prevalent to you today?
No, actually, in honesty, I still think about it. I still have a craving for it. If I was out there, I'd probably still be using. I've got this hedge of protection around me at this moment, and it's where I need to be right now.
Brantley graduated from the Jericho House 3 years ago, and now he is a counselor helping other men struggling with their opiate addiction.
It's really exciting. I never thought I would make it this far. I used to look at people with 3 years clean like, how did you do it? But being a counselor here now on staff, I enjoy getting to use my story to help other guys who are going through similar things. I would say the best thing the Jericho House did for me was it helped show me who I really am. I didn't know who I was. I got married about 9 months ago, and that's been like the greatest blessing of my entire life right there. And getting to use my experience, all of my experiences, to help them is like the biggest blessing I could ever do. You know, we don't get paid a lot, but it's not about the money for me. This is what I'm called to do.
After 12 months of recovery, Jonathan has made it to graduation.
You start the program and you really want it to end. right off the bat. Like, that's the first thing you're looking forward to. It's not fun to have to look at yourself and work on yourself every day.
Right.
So, but going throughout the program, you find that it's the journey and not the destination that really means something. That's where the change comes from. It's a challenge to overcome, you know, more the drug addiction than the program. So, you know, I'm very thankful on that aspect of it, that I'm able to not be a complete slave to my drug anymore. The time and the effort and the energy that these men invest into this place is amazing, especially for the return that they get. You know, not a lot of people go out and invite drug addicts to come stay at their house. And it's an amazing thing that they do, it really is.
I think the thing that was different with Jericho House than other programs is they really try to get you to look inside and try to decipher why you're being so self-destructive.
Just get the word out that there is help and there is hope.
Today you're at the graduation for Jericho House. How does it make you feel seeing the graduees, and does it inspire your journey in recovery?
It makes me feel inspired because I know each and every one of these men, and I've seen the progression to when I got to the Jericho House 7 months ago. From then till now, it's very inspiring just to see the changes that they've all done. But I can tell you this much: once I gave everything to God and made the decision to come to the Jericho House, it seems like all these things that I was trying to juggle and trying to manage and try to force are all being worked out by me being here.
I'm my own man again, and I'm not controlled like I used to be. So that part I'm very thankful for.
I'll tell you what it feels like to see the mental health student graduating. It feels like payday. It is very rewarding because of a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons I was thinking about earlier today is you know, my family gets pretty big when we do graduations. So that's always exciting, adding a new member to the family.
The investment it takes to walk with one guy for an entire year, every day, seeing them struggle, seeing them slip and fall sometimes, but seeing them get back up, seeing these things click, and seeing them realize what they need to do, and then actually watching them do it, it's the greatest feeling in the world.
It's only been a little bit over a year, so I can still very vividly remember how bad it was, and that's something that I hope never to lose, because I feel like that's one of the key factors that will keep me sober and keep me along the lines of walking it out, that not trying to go back to what I used to do and how I used to be. You know, I don't ever want to forget where I came from or who that person was, because somewhere inside that person's still there. And if I give them that chance, they're right there waiting for me.
Find your passion, dream your dreams, and follow your instincts to success.
What kind of legacy do you think that the Zone and Davis Direction is almost leaving for Davis?
I hope it's leading a legacy of wellness, because if you manage your disease, you can stay just as well as you want to stay.
Rows and rows of picture frames hang on the wall at the Zone. These are the lives that were loved and lost to the disease of opiate addiction. Drugs designed to relieve pain have left these families with the worst pain of all. Missy devotes her time to helping people in opioid recovery so that one day families don't have to bear the pain of losing a loved one to opiates. Long-term recovery and community seem to be the common threads in breaking an opiate addiction. As a nation, we prescribe and use opiates too much for too long. Maybe we don't need to medicate all the pain away. If you need help in addiction recovery, go to these links. People are ready to help you move forward in taking back your life. I'm Savannah Pratt. Thank you for joining us tonight and watching Addicted, the Opioid Epidemic. Good night.